Hey everyone, welcome to the latest installment of MSP Business School. As always, I'm Brian Doyle, your host here today, and we're going to be bringing on a guest and really getting into a conversation about how you can improve service delivery and what you can do to make your customers raving fans through your service delivery process and save a few bucks and put it back in your pocket. So I'm really excited to bring this guest on today, and with me I have Dustin Puryear from Giant Rocketship.
Yes. Hey,
Dustin,
Brian,
welcome, man. Yeah, you bet. So, Dustin, I always like to kick things off for those that might not have run into you yet at a show or gotten a chance to learn about Giant Rocketship. Maybe tell a little bit about your background and how you ended up in this wild, crazy world of MSP.
Yeah, just like everybody else, it was a meandering path, right? So I went to college, it was computer science. Fortunately, I was a business admin minor, which has been huge, has helped me so much. And then I came out of that, I was an IT guy, and then I became a developer in the .com world, if anybody remembers that.
I do. And gray hair, I'll tell you.
Yeah. And it all kind of worked out because I learned I had a certain talent for writing and speaking. So I did a bunch of tours for Microsoft, wrote a bunch of books and magazines. And so you get all of this, I guess, let's call it artificial credibility really quickly. And started doing consulting on the Unix side of things. And then, of course, the .com I was working for, like the second or third one folded. It was the end of that wave. And then I said, you know what, let me try this consulting thing. And like 20 years later, I'm selling my MSP, moving on to the MSP vendor side. So that's how I got where I'm at now.
And that seems to be a trend these days on a lot of us that exit out of our MSPs. Hey, let's come on over to the other side of the fence and solve a problem that was a big issue for us as well.
Yeah, I mean, there was two reasons. One, I had a product that a lot of people were interested in, and I was having to kind of like pick and choose where I was spending my time. And the other thing is, after 20 years, you just make the decision, hey, I think I'm ready for something different. I want to change things up a little bit. And so I sold my MSP, then formally started Giant Rocketship, and here I am. In fact, just so you know, I just sold my MSP October of last year.
Yeah, so I was actually going to pause you there because one question, and this will be a little bit of a digression, but definitely information that's always being asked from our listeners. What did that process look like for you when you were exiting out? And, was there any moments of anxiety along the way? Mergers and acquisitions are such a big part of the MSP conversation now. And, when I have guests like Abe Garver join us, who, has become like the MSP M&A guru out there, we see that the questions just flood in from his episode. So I love to ask anybody that went through the exit process, what did that process feel like? And what were the things you weren't expecting in that process that you would tell somebody else to prepare for?
I would say, and it's interesting now that I'm on the vendor side, I've learned how broken my thinking was of M&A as an MSP, because things move very quickly on the vendor side. But I learned, first of all, that your first deal will always fail. And I really don't know that many people where their first acquisition offer went through.
Yep.
And so the same happened to me. The company was hot and heavy and they were ready for it. And then right at the last minute, they had some financing issues and it all fell through. And I was just like, what? Like, this happened? I thought I had bought my ticket to Tahiti. I thought I was done. And so it completely fell through. The second one dragged on because they were growing very quickly, so they were struggling. And the third one went through, and it went through very quickly. And so the first lesson I learned was that first deal is almost definitely not going to go through. You need to have multiple deals. You need to have an acquisition pipeline.
Yep.
If you're looking to sell.
No, I love that because, I've not really thought about it that way, that, in terms of the pipeline. But if I look back to when we did it, we literally were in a deal where we had a group, people were on planes. And then the lawyers started fighting about certain terms as people were in the planes coming in to fly in. And literally these people landed and turned around and our deal was done. Mm-hmm. And, it does happen. I think that's a great way of looking at it. Expect the first one to fail. You're going to learn something along the way and then try to get it done in the next one, hopefully. Right. But
you'll have the data room all set up.
Yeah. It's wild. And I think your best one there with the buying a ticket to Tahiti, never cash the check until the check's in hand, right? We've all learned that story.
Not even it's in hand until it goes through the bank. And the bank holds it for 5 days, and then releases the money.
Right. Awesome. Well, hey, thank you for sharing. I'm sure somebody out there learned something that they didn't know. That somebody was me, by the way, because I like that about the M&A pipeline. But anyhow, let's kind of change over to what you're doing in the world today. And you became a vendor. Now you're on the other side. You've started Giant Rocketship. What is the problem you were experiencing you said, I got to fix this for everybody?
Let me fix that real quick. So actually, the Rocketship originated as some super ugly, back-end scripts and code because I was solving an issue at my MSP. I could not understand why we were constantly behind on tickets. We always had this overwhelming amount of tickets for our staff. And I had a full-time service coordinator, and she was working, man. She was constantly spending her time moving work around. Hey, what's the delay here? And it's like, no matter what we did, we always had this big backlog of tickets. And I said, there's just got to be a way to solve this problem. Like, first of all, we have some technicians working the ticket they shouldn't be working. Some technicians call in sick. They do that.
Yeah.
And so you're constantly in flux. And I was just like, man, I'm a developer. Isn't this a grid? Can't I just map work to people? And so I had this really slow solution that helped while my service coordinator was out on vacation. And I just noticed our ticket count went down by like 20% over the course of a week because the automation was just plugging the work in with the right people. And that was the genesis of the product, which was, how do we dramatically cut down the backlog of tickets so customers aren't left waiting all the time?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, stale tickets are a real problem, right? And as tickets age, people obviously, a little problem becomes a big problem when nobody's paying attention to it, right? And those are things that can hurt your brand. And if you've got, again, I won't throw shade at your dispatcher or what they were doing, but sometimes it's tough for humans to manage that many chess pieces. And
they have so many balls in the air and they just can't, but you know what service coordinators are good at? Coordinating people and customers. Yeah. They're not good at moving paperwork around all the time, which is what
but that people and customers is probably the biggest problem. And sometimes that paperwork, that's why it hangs too, right? Service coordinators busy making sure the right chess pieces are out at the right locations or working remotely on the right work. And same time, they're the buffer with the customer because you're trying to keep them away from those technicians. That could fill a day without even looking at it, and those tickets just aged another day, right? So I could definitely see the need for automation really coming into play to just help organize what that service coordinator should be talking about.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so it was such a big deal for us. And then when I first had it, this was a little bit post-COVID, I think I went to some conference, and as an MSP, you're always talking about, hey, what solutions am I using? What am I doing? Yep. And this is the one where I would kind of talk about, oh yeah, I've kind of just automated this whole dispatch side, and people were just super interested. And people said, how can I do it? And I said, well, this is a horrible piece of code. So I flipped around. We had a couple of customers that were ready to pay that day before we even had anything out, and we rolled it out to them as our kind of beta customers. And 2 years later, here we are.
Yeah, and when you think about the MSP world, that service delivery story is the most important story, right? Being in my role over at, being on my side of the equation, where we talk about QBRs and customer relationships and all those kind of things. It's the easiest part for customers to kind of take a step back from when things get busy, right? But service delivery, they can't take a step back from. That's the bread and butter. So, I'm always hearing folks saying that they wish they could better organize how they're doing their service delivery. I always hear the people giving me the old, yeah, we're revamping our process. And unfortunately, a lot of times they try to solve these problems by taking out the wrong tools. Yeah. Let's switch RMMs. This is going to be the panacea.
Oh God, MSPs that switch to RMM every 12 months. I don't understand how they get any work done.
And I'm like, man, the amount of for the $10 you save, the amount of time that you put into labor just to make those changes, get the standard operating procedures doesn't work. But I think now as AI continues to develop, as automation becomes a hotter topic, I think people are starting to look at it a little bit better as well, look at it the right way, and start going, this isn't a tool problem at the foundation. It's what is the process that sits on top of it, and how can we streamline how we do service delivery? So maybe talk a little bit about how Giant Rocketship can help in those kind of considerations.
Yeah, absolutely. So Rocketship has definitely matured, and now Rocketship is to a point now where it can make decisions. Hey, this is going to go into my internal team. This is going to go to an outsourced team. Hey, I'm going to feed this work and update the ticket so that it goes to an AI agent to review and respond to the customer. Right. So the first thing is it's making the decisions of where the work is going, whether that's AI, internal or external resources. And so the first thing you do is, instead of you having these kind of rigid, fragile configurations where every tool is in a silo, Rocketship becomes that dispatcher of all the work in your help desk to all the tool sets that you have. So we've really helped kind of simplify that. And the other thing that we've helped do is, and you're talking about AI and how people look at work, is we've gone out of our way to change the way that people look at work. So one of the flaws of the help desk model is everything is ticket based. So the reality is a ticket's just a database of time entries and notes. That's what a ticket is. But people talk about a ticket like it's a verb.
Yeah.
Right. But it's not a verb. It's just a document. And how many tickets do you have? Well, that doesn't help. It's more like, how much work do you have? How much duration of work do you have? What's the priority of this work? And so one of the things we've really helped on the human side is making our customers understand, hey, look, it's all about how much work do you have queued up, regardless of whether it's 1 or 100 tickets. And so we've kind of abstracted the ticket away to some degree so that people really understand that, what, help desk work is no different than work outside of my office. Like when I go home, I don't think, well, how many tickets do I have to clean up the house, right? They're like, oh, I need to do the kitchen. I need to do the bedroom. We want you looking at things as activities. And so it's really freed up resources to quit freaking out over how many tickets they have in their queue. Because that's what I own the MSP. What stresses technicians out is not the work. It's that they have 400 tickets in their queue.
Yep.
Right.
And on given days, they might only be able to work on 3 of them if the work is deep enough, right? So how do you reallocate some of those lower priority items to more junior members, maybe on your help desk, who can bang out some of those, repeatable, problems that come up every single day?
Yeah. So we have some features that will do that for you. So first of all, our software understands there's different teams for different tasks, right?
Yep.
And then also there's different tiers in the team. You're going to have your level 1, your level 2, level 3. It understands that. It always wants to give tickets to the lowest cost, largest team, or tier rather. And then also it can reevaluate its past decisions to rebalance work. So let's say I give 5 units of work to everybody on your team, Brian, when you guys are onboarding your customers. Yep. Well, you're going to have some people that are really fast and some people that are really slow. So Rocketship sees the different cadence and it says, oh, you know what? I made a mistake. I'm going to go ahead and give some more work to Jill because she's faster than Joe. And so it's constantly kind of fine tuning that. And then the other thing it wants to do is it understands that a recurring ticket, even a high priority recurring ticket, is actually lower priority than a medium priority help desk ticket. Because one faces the customer, one is internal. And so we have this concept of we will rank things by SLA priority, but even within that, you can stratify it for, this is a customer response, this is a help desk, this is knock. And so it will stratify all of that work in the way, what we like to say is we work in reality, not the hypothetical or the theoretical. How do people actually operate? Well, people return phone calls before they go look at a printer issue. Like that's just how they work. So Rocketship understands that dynamic. So the main thing that we do is we feed work to your technicians in a way that you would naturally do yourself, but we just do it faster and better.
That's awesome. And that prioritization or understanding, where the ticket hierarchy lives is definitely, something that could be challenging for new service coordinators too, and kind of automate that and put some rules to it definitely helps the cause, because you're right. Anything customer facing is going to be the challenge and needs to be addressed earlier than anything we're doing in the background, or anything that's project based that might be multi-day, or anything that lives outside the sphere of customers going to call if it's not done in about 4 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours.
Yeah, and think about your VIP users.
Yeah.
Like, all MSPs say they don't have VIP. We have a priority system here, Dustin, and it's just what it is. The second you talk to their frontline staff, they're like, that is not how this operates.
No.
We have whoever signs the check gives first for each customer, and that's what we've been told by the service manager, and that's how we operate. So that's reality versus the theoretical.
Or the other one that the technicians will decide on their own because it's their pain they feel. Well, Janice yells when we don't do things immediately, so we drop everything when Janice calls, just so we don't have to listen to her yell.
Yeah, I mean, there's a quality of life issue sometimes with your users. Yeah.
Yeah. So no, that's great. So, with that being said, Dustin, I think you've given our listeners a really good understanding of what, Giant Rocketship is looking to accomplish for them and how it can definitely help, customers with that automation. What are you hearing from your clients when they implement this? What are some of the win feedback stories that you're hearing from your clients that have been game changing?
Yeah, so kind of the two big wins we always like to pull out in the demos, and actually I just heard one this morning. I was on a call with the customer in the UK, and he was kind of talking about through some changes that they have, and they're a pretty large organization, but they just dropped one of their full-time service coordinators, and they basically just reassigned her to some more account management tasks. And so the biggest win that generally we hear is, hey, Dustin, I had some people roll off the payroll. Maybe they quit and went to another job, and we just didn't replace them.
Yeah.
Our technicians, that we heard this a long time ago, which was somebody lost 2 of their engineers, and they just said, you know what, let's just see what happens if we don't replace them. And they never replaced them. And they specifically said it's because just the way that Rocketship's queuing up the work, and it's always going to specific people based on the ticket and the task, it just makes things more effective, and we just never replace those 2 engineers. And then we just heard this morning that, hey, look, now I don't even have a full-time service coordinator. She's doing more account management tasks now, because other than some weird oddball tickets here and there, we don't really have to look at where the work's going. It just happens automatically.
So, what I'm hearing from you there is just think of the ROI opportunity, listener. If you can reduce your staff, not necessarily by getting rid of them with the tool, but if they roll off, not replacing them, I don't know what Dustin's tool costs, but I got to admit that's almost 100x savings right there. If 2 employees can be replaced by the tool, and certainly being able to put people in better spots is another one. If you've got a service coordinator that has that aptitude to do account management, and account management's going to bring you new revenue in different ways, whether you're doing business reviews or just being better engaged with your customer proactively instead of reactively, how much of a win is that to take that reactive portion off the table and move that into a stronger customer facing role? So those are awesome wins, Dustin. Thanks for sharing those, no doubt.
Yeah, thank you. So
Dustin, this episode should be going live in about a week of when we're recording it here today. So with that said, where are you going to be?
Well, I know I'm going to be flying out to MSP Geek a couple of days. We begged, and they finally gave us a table. I think we were just too new last year. That, and I waited too late. But we'll be at MSP Geek Con in Orlando, and then we will be at DattoCon in Ireland, and then ChannelCon, and I think another DattoCon. So we'll be all over.
Yep. So, look out for Dustin at these shows, and, make sure you connect with him and talk a little bit about service delivery. It sounds like there's a lot of optimization available to each of you. Dustin, before we wrap up, any closing thoughts, anything you want to cover that we haven't touched upon today that you might feel is valuable to our listeners?
No, I don't think I have any new material. I don't want to overwhelm the listeners. But again, if you see me at one of these shows, I'll be at PAX Tech, not as a vendor, just going as a guest. If you see me, just come say, hey, I do love talking about two things, service delivery and sales. So happy to talk about those things at any time.
Awesome. Well, Dustin, really appreciate you coming on with us today. Always great to hear about other innovative vendors that are coming on the scene that our listeners might not have as much awareness of. So really appreciate you joining me there. Listeners, as you know, you can get this podcast anywhere that you download your podcast from at MSP Business School. And of course, you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Dustin, thank you so much for joining me today. I look forward to seeing you out on the road as well. And, have a great weekend.
Yeah, ciao.